As we begin, just a reminder, this is our final Bible study video as we return to our classes on Sunday, August 22nd. I do understand that some may not be returning just yet. There's still plenty of uncertainty out there about coronavirus and the Delta variant. If for some reason we do have to move backward from our plan of having live classes, I'll try to at least offer teaching here on the YouTube channel in an audio version without quite so many pictures and extra features. But personally, I'm moving into a very busy season of writing, and it won't be possible for me to produce the intricate kinds of video lessons we've been doing. But thanks again for your support and appreciation during these months. I've really enjoyed doing these videos, and I'm looking forward to teaching in front of real people again. So, let's get to it. Let's see what this lesson has to say about wisdom. In the last couple of weeks, we looked at David during two of the lowest periods of his life. We saw certain choices he made, even while being a man who was highly devoted to God. And these choices wrought real tragedy, loss of life, and even disaster for the kingdom of Israel. But one thing we see over and over in the Bible, no matter how great a mess we make as people, God will redeem it. He'll bring something remarkable out of it. That doesn't justify what we do. It doesn't whitewash the choices David made or the choices you make or the consequences that come from these things for us. But it shows that God has a way of bringing joy out of disaster. He is a God of hope, a God who always has a future set out for us. David and Bathsheba lost a child in the wake of David's adultery and his plot to murder Bathsheba's husband. But it's kind of interesting, isn't it? That God didn't break up the couple. God didn't step in and say, no, this union can't happen because it came through sin. He gave David and Bathsheba a future, and he blessed it. And that future was another son, this one named Solomon. It was under Solomon that Israel truly reached its highest glory as a nation. David got things moving in that direction. David really built the kingdom, but under Solomon, the nation flourished during his lifetime, and he finally built the temple that his father had dreamed about and asked God if he could build. The temple was seen as, finally, a place that was vast and impressive enough to honor God, a holy place for pilgrims throughout the nations to come and worship. And all this happened under Solomon. But today's passage, taken from 1 Kings, actually introduces us to Solomon and tells us something about his relationship with God. Let's begin reading in 1 Kings 3:3. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David. Only he sacrificed and offered incense at the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the principal high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness and righteousness and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. Although I am only a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this, your great people?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches, or for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare with you. If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life. This is a famous story, one of those classic stories where someone is given one wish to be granted, like in a fairy tale. Except this is God speaking to Solomon in a dream. In the previous chapter, David has died. The books of 1st and 2nd Samuel have told his story completely, and now the books of Kings will carry forward the story of the kingdom and how it fell. The Bible tells us David passed on and slept with his ancestors in the city of David. It was David who made Jerusalem the great capital city, and he reigned there for 33 years, through the growth of an empire, through civil war, and now as the torch passes on to his son, but it will always be the city of David. It's as if God is giving Solomon in this story a coronation gift. What request would you like granted? God asks the question. Now, why does God ask a question? Have you ever thought about that? In a lot of places in the Bible, he asks questions. So does Jesus, for that matter. Why does a good school teacher ask a question if they know the answer? Well, it's to make someone think, to make someone clarify. He doesn't need to hear the answer. You do. So God is basically meeting with Solomon in a dream, which was the ancient version of Zoom, and asking him, what is your leadership going to be about? What is your one thing? What are you going after as you rule? And Solomon says, give me wisdom. Now, in the ancient world, that was the number one virtue. We have a whole section of the Bible devoted to wisdom, and particularly the book of Proverbs. How would you define wisdom? It's insight, understanding, the ability to make good decisions. In the Bible and the ancient Near East, wisdom is always associated with success. Be wise and you'll succeed. I'm not sure we share that viewpoint in the modern world. We're a lot more cynical. We're afraid wisdom is for losers, that it's guile or deception, trickiness that makes you successful. But I guess it depends on how you define success, doesn't it? In the previous chapter, while David was alive, he told Solomon, you are a wise man. He already had at least some wisdom, Solomon did. But before God, he describes himself as a child. He says, I don't know how to go in or go out. He asks for an understanding mind, but the actual Hebrew says, a listening heart. I really like that a lot. To the Hebrews, the heart was the seat of understanding, so that's why we translate it a little differently. But I like to think of wisdom as a listening heart. So much of life is just watching and learning rather than talking and demanding. So many of our problems with each other, including our political disagreements, would fade away if we simply had listening hearts. It's interesting, isn't it? This is known as the information age. We have incredible knowledge at our fingertips. We carry along little microcomputers that can tell us just about any fact we may wish to know with a few finger taps. We're not hurting for knowledge, but wisdom is a whole other thing. Why is it that so much misinformation is passed around on social media? Because we lack the wisdom of discernment. If we hear what we want to hear, we don't check the facts. We just pass it right on down the line, and, well, that's of course not wisdom. Another point that's interesting. Did you notice how God was pleased with what Solomon didn't ask for? He didn't ask for selfish things. He didn't ask for wealth or long life or the destruction of his enemies. And God says, I'm going to give you some of these things because you didn't ask for them. One of those frustrating paradoxes, isn't it? To get certain things, you have to not seek them. Wow. But isn't life that way? The best things seem to come when we're not looking for them, when we're not forcing things. Love is like that. It has to find us sometimes. What God says here, Jesus echoes in Matthew 6:33 when he says, strive first for the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. I really love the way C.S. Lewis says it. Aim at heaven and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth and you will get neither. God's greatest blessings come almost as a surprise because we're seeking other things. We're seeking to serve. We're seeking someone else's benefit. It's in those moments that wisdom grows, not because we're following a 10-week crash course on instant wisdom, but because we're living our lives before God, understanding, like Solomon, that we're no more than children, and that we really need him to help us listen with our hearts. This is what, above all things on earth, Solomon requested. And just requesting it was proof enough that Solomon had wisdom. Thanks for listening.